How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Memches, Daf 48 of Masechta Sanhedrin, friends, your friends. Well, we talk for the first big chunk of today's Daf about Hazmona Milsa, about is designating something considered significant or not. And then we get into like some other interesting stuff towards the end. So here we go. We're going to start on Daf Mem Zayin Amud Beis, about 10-15 lines or so from the bottom of Mem Zayin Amud Beis. Says the Gemara, it was stated, Ha'oireg beged lemeis. So somebody who weaves a garment for a nifter, for a mace. A shroud. Abaye Omer Osir, Rav Omer Mutter. So Abaye says that by designating this shroud for a nifter, for a mace, so designating it makes it already Osir Ba'anoya as Tachriche mace, and as being shaykh to the mace. Whereas Rava says meh. He says simply designating this garment as Tachriche HaMeis is not enough to make it also Ba'anoyu. Azoy. 1 second. No? Okay. Yeah, alright. Here we go. Okay. Alright. Here we go. Alright. Mutter. Fine. Abaye Omer Osir. So Abaye says Osir. Hazmona Milsei. Because simply designating it for a mace is enough to make it Osir Ba'anoyo. As if, Rashi says, right, what does it say? Ki'ilu karchovo. As if he already dressed the mace in the garment. Whereas Rava says the garment is Mutter Ba'anoyo because simply designating it for Tachriche mace is not enough. My Taima de Abaye. How come Abaye says that Hazmona Milsi? Gomer Sham me Egla. It says Sham by a mace. Right? It says Vatomus Sham Miriam Vatikover Sham. And also says Sham by Egla Arufa. Right? V'arfu Sham eso Egla Banochal, I think. So my Egla Arufa be'Hazmona Mitzira. So by Egla Arufa Ochit Ba'azmona, what does Rashi say? 2 lines from the bottom of Rashi. The Kaimlan Yuridosel Nachal Eisen Hi Oisarta. That already going down to this valley is enough to make it already Osir as an Egla Arufa. Egla Arufa Ba'azmona Mitzvah. So I know Ba'azmona Mitzvah. So Ochit by a mace, Ochit by Tachriche a mace, simply designating it for that purpose makes it Osir Ba'anoyo. V'Rove Gomar Sham me'avedes kechovim, whereas Rove says that the Gzeir Shava is Sham from avodas kechovim. What does it say? Abe ta'abdun is called Okomos Hashavdu Sham Hagoyim Asher Yoshem Oisam Esalehem, etc. So ma'avedes kechovim ba'azmona loy mitzvah by avodas kechovim, simply designating something for a getchke is not enough to make it also ba'anoy, as Rashi says. And the last Rashi on the Amud, or on the Daf really, Lehedjit, the time of Sechel of the Gulim, HaOmer Bayizel Avodas Gezor, that this house is going to be for Avodas Zorah, Shorzel Avodas Zorah, or this ox is for Avodas Zorah. Mutter, it's Mutter Shen Hektish Avodas Zorah. There's no concept of Hektish when it comes to Avodas Zorah. So again, so Avodas Kochavim Bazmana Loi Mitzvah Afachonami Bazmana Loi Mitzvah. So Ochit here by the shroud Hazmona is not enough to make it also Ba'anoya. Rava, my time of the Gomer me Egla Arufa. Rava, who makes the Gzeir Shava from Avodah Zarah, how come he doesn't learn the Gzeir Shava fin Egla Arufa? So on my loch he'll say Mishamshin Gamrina Lafuke Egla Arufa Dehi Gufa Kidosha. That when it comes to Tachriche HaMeis, so the mace itself is kind of the main thing, but the Tachriche are what surround, are the beged of the mace, and similarly the Avodah Zarah sort of designating something that's going to be for avodah zarah. Also, it's ki'ilu a mishamish of avodah zarah. For example, this house is going to be served for used to serve getchkes. As opposed to the egla arufa, we're talking about it's the thing itself. It's the calf itself. So therefore, we learn out avodah zarah. Right? We learn out the shroud from avodah zarah. V'abai by time of the government avodas kechavim. How come Abai doesn't learn enough from avodas kechavim? That we know that a shroud from egla rufa, because both shrouds and egla rufa are orcha. They're something that you're supposed to be doing, something that's not navera. It's dafka mitzvah, right? As opposed to avodas kechavim is dafka, it's an avera. You shouldn't be doing avodah zarah, so therefore we're not going to learn it out from there. All right. Meisve, we have a kasha. Now we're going to have all sorts of kashas essentially for the next omid and a half. Meisve, we have a kasha. Kipashu tome midros v'nosanta l'sefer tahor min midros aval tome mago midros. Oh, givaldig. So, if you have some kind of scarf or something. So a scarf is something that you can fold up, you can sit on it, right? So therefore it's susceptible to tumas midros. Right? If you have a zov, for example, and the zov sits on the scarf, it will become an avatuma. Now an avatuma can be mitame odom v'kelim. Now we're saying that so you have meisve kipa shu tame midros. So if you have this scarf that it's tame tumas midros, it's an avatuma. But then what happens is v'nasanta l'sefer, and you've essentially decided that, you know what, this scarf is going to be used to wrap a sefer Torah. It's going to be used to wrap a sefer Torah. Now, simply designating it for its use for a sefer Torah means that it's without even having to take it to the mikvah or anything like that. It's purifying it in any way. You're simply, by designating it for the Sefer Torah, you're saying, okay, it's no longer a garment that you're going to sit on, right? It's something that you need, right? Amod v'naisem achtenu, right? Is a requirement that we have by Tumas Midros, as we've learned already years and years and years ago in Masechta Shabbos, right? That the fact that now it's being used for a Sefer Torah, so it's not something that you can sit on. You need it for the Sefer Torah. If somebody's sitting on it, you could say, hey, get up, we need that for the Sefer Torah. It's not something for sitting on. So therefore, just simply by designating it for the Sefer Torah, it means that it's no longer something that's shaykh to Tumas Midros, and therefore it's no longer Tomei Tumas Midros. However, it doesn't become pure. How come it doesn't become pure? Well, because it's still susceptible to Tumas Maga, right? If a mace if you have right, tumas midros is a avatuma. An avatuma could be mitame odom v'kelim. So even though what is that? I don't know what that is. Wait, is that anything? I don't know. Even though there's a fly flying around over it, it's really flying. I guess they call it a fly for a reason. It's flying. Anyways. So when it was Tomei Tumas Midros, the thing is, the thing is that the scarf is essentially touching itself, right? So even though it's no longer Tomei Tumas Midros, but when it was Tomei Tumas Midros, it was also technically touching itself, so to speak, and therefore it's Tomei Tumas Maga, which would, and Tumas Midros is Mitame Odom V'Kelim, so therefore it became Tomei. It's a Rishon L'Tumah now, if I understand correctly, because it was touching itself as an Avatuma, so it becomes a Rishon L'Tumah. So it's still a Rishon L'Tumah, but it's no longer Tomei Tumas Midros anymore. Okay, and they were saying that simply by designating it for use for a Sefer Torah is enough to be Mevatel Tumas Midros. Now it's Tomei Tumas Maga as a Rishon L'Tumah. So now Meisve, we have a kasha again. Kippah, you have the scarf. Shu Tomei Midros, which is Tomei Tumas Midros. V'nosanta the sefer, and you decide that it's going to be used for a Sefer Torah. Tahor min midros, so it's simply by designating it for a Sefer Torah, it's no longer Tomei Tumas Midros, Avol, however, Tomei Maga Midros. But it is Tomei, it's a Rishon L'Tumah because it touched it was touching itself when it was Tamei Tumas Midras, so even though it's no longer Tamei Tumas Midras, it's still going to be Tamei Maga Midras, which is a Rishon L'Tumah. So we see, what's the point? We see that simply by designating it for Sefer Torah is enough to be Mavatal Tumas Midras. So we see Hazmana Milsa Hi, that simply designating something is significant. Eimon Asante V'Korachtoi. So we say, meh. It doesn't necessarily mean that he only designated it, and now it's no longer Tamei Tumas Midras. Rather, he not only designated it, but he also then wrapped it around the Sefer Torah. So it's not just the Hazmana, but it's a Hazmana plus a Maise, because you wrapped it around the Sefer Torah. But why do I need both? How come I need designating and wrapping? Like Rav Chizde, Haisudre de Azmene lemeitzer be tefillin, that Rav Chizde says that if you have a pouch and you set aside the pouch for tefillin, okay, fine. So Azman, so you set it aside that this pouch is going to be used for tefillin, vitzar be tefillin, and then you actually put the tefillin in the pouch. So you have Hazmana plus a Maise, also the Meitzer Beipshite, so now you can no longer put in just other regular things, maybe coins and things like that. Okay, 1 second, let me see something. Azoi. Okay, fine. Yeah, I think it's money. Fine. Azmene velo tzarbe, but if there was Hazmana, but you didn't actually put the tefillin in it, so there was no Maise, tzarbe velo azmene, or if you put the tefillin in it, but you had never designated it to be for tefillin, shari lemeitzer be pshite, well then you can still put in money. So we see that according to Rav Chizde, in order for it to be considered designated for tefillin, you have to have designated it and actually put the tefillin in it, so it has mana plus a maise, and that is how you make it osir, according to Rav Chizde. Abaye to Amar Azmana Milsahi. However, Abaye, who says that simply designating it is enough, he would disagree and say, Azmene, that if he designated the pouch for tefillin, af al gav teloy sarbe, even though he didn't actually put the tefillin in them, sarbe, and if he did put the tefillin in them, so it would depend, azmene in, if he had also designated it to be for tefillin, so then it would be specifically for tefillin, because it was azmona plus a maise. Lo azmene, if he simply put the tefillin in, but never designated it, lo, it would not be specifically for tefillin. According to Abaye, the azmona is the key factor here. Tashma, come in here. Nefesh shebanoi l'shem chai. So if you have, what does Rashi say? Nefesh binyan. It's a building, sha'ala kever, on top of a grave, shebano l'shem chai, that it was built for a live person, that when he dies, he will be buried in it. So you have this building that was going to be used for to be above a burial grave. Shabbanoi l'shem chai, that it was built for somebody who is alive. 1 second, where was that again? Where am I? Okay. Okay. And touch my nefesh, so this building, Shabbanoi l'shem chai, that was built for a person who's alive, mutter ba'anoya, so it's mutter ba'anoya. Hosiv bo dimus echod l'shem meis, but then when somebody dies, or maybe I guess the person dies, and then you add another row of stones, and the person's already dead, okay, so it's l'shem meis, so you're basically designating this row of stones for the mace, Osur ba'anoyo, so it's Osur ba'anoyo. So we see that simply designating this row of stones for the mace makes it Osur ba'anoyo. So Azmona Milsahi. So Hachob ma'eskinon deroma be mace. Well, here it's talking about that you actually put the mace in there. So therefore it's tummy. But Yochi might irya hosif kilo hosif nami. Well, but if that's the case, if there's a mace in there, well then who cares that he added another row of stones? Regardless, there's a mace in there. It's going to be tummy. So the tzricha. 1 second. 1 second. Right. So then it becomes also ba'ano. Okay. So my area hosif, so kilosif nami would be also ba'ano even if he didn't add an extra row because there's a mace in there. Even though you remove the mace, the point is that if you had set it aside for the mace, and then put the mace in there, but then the mace left, so then it would retain its tuma status. Okay, so davale azmano ma'aseh te'i lo hosef shari ipani de havale kitzar bevelo azmane. Wait, so what are we saying? So right. Okay. Right. So initially we wanted to say that since he's adding the row for the mace, so it becomes Asur Ba'anoya. So we're saying Azmana Milsi, but then we say no, that there's actually a mace in there. But if there's a mace in there, then why do you have to add the extra row? The point is that if you add the extra, so meaning if you have the extra row and you have the mace in there, so then it will be Hazmana plus a Maisa. And therefore, even if the mace is removed from there, it would still retain its Isra Anoya. Okay. Omer Rafram by Papas, Rafram by Papa, Omer Chizda, Im Hoya Makiro, Cholzo, U, Mutter. Okay, so Rafram by Papa Betzim says that with regard to this row that was added, so you had added this row for the mace, and then you added a mace there, but if you remove the row subsequently, so then it becomes Mutter Banoya once again. Okay. Toshma Kamnir Achotzev Kever Le'oviv. If a person excavates a kever for his father, but then he goes and he buries his father in a different kever. You cover bo olamis. He can't bury anybody else in there, right? Nobody else can be buried in there forever, since it was designated for his father. So we see that once it was designated for his father, it is Asur behanoya with the hazmana alone. Hasu mishum kvod aviv. However, we say no. It's the reason why it's asur is not because of kvod aviv, is not because of hazmana milsahi. Rather, it's because of kvod aviv. V'chinami mistabel. This ochit makes sense. The katani seifa, because it says in the seifa, Reb Shimon Gamliel Omer, it says Reb Shimon Gamliel, afachotzev avonim le aviv v'halach v'kav makom. Even somebody who quarries not a kever but the stones for the kever. For his father, but in the end he ended up burying his father somewhere else. You cover boyin olamis. You can't use them to bury anybody else forever because they're already designated for his father. Now the thing is, this makes sense if you're saying that the reason why they're asur is out of honor for his father. The thing is, if you say it's about azmana, it's not shaykh here. Okay, why not? Well, we say tavi la'ariga mi'ika l'man d'omer kilu. Okay. So Abaye had said that if somebody who weaves a shroud for a mace, so it is simply asur by designation, right? It has mana milsa. The thing is, Abaye would, however, agree that if you spun threads that will then be used to weave a shroud for a mace, those threads are 2 times removed, and therefore are twice removed, and therefore they are not going to be asur ba'anoya. It's too far removed, and therefore so when it comes to hazmana, so the garment itself that was designated for the mace, that will be asur ba'anoya, but simply spinning threads to be used in a garment which is going to be used for a mace, the threads are mutter ba'anoya, because hazmana milsa does not apply there, and therefore if we're talking about quarrying stones to be used to build a kever for one's father, the stones are also twice removed, and therefore they would not be asur even if you say hazmana milsa. But here we're saying that the stones are asur. How is that explicable? You can explain it by saying that it's not about hazmana, rather it's about kvod aviv. Okay, so again, iyamet b'shlam mishum kvod aviv shaper. This makes sense if you're viewing it within the context of, or from the frame, or from the perspective, I don't know, that it's about kvod aviv, that out of honor his father, these stones that were required to be used for his father's kever, those stones can't be used for anything else. But Eli Amrit Mishum Hazmana, but if it's about Hazmana, it's twice removed, right? Meaning building the grave for his father is one thing, but quarrying the stones to be used for building the grave, that would not be also. Does anybody say that spinning threads to then be used in a shroud, to then be used for a nifter? Nobody would say that would be also als Hazmana. Toshma, come in here. kever chodosh, kever chodosh, a new kever. What does Rashi say? Kever chodosh hashtag sagadate afilu zimno lemeis. Okay, a new grave. Now we're assuming that it means that even if he set it aside for a designated it for a mace, but we're saying it is mutter ba'anoyo. Hitil bo nefel. If you bury a nefel in the kever, then also ba'anoyo becomes also ba'anoyo. Hitil in, lo hitil lo. So specifically, if he buries a nefel in the kever, then it becomes also ba'anoyo. But so long as he doesn't, it's mutter ba'anoyo. So it sounds like hazmana lav milsahi. So we say no. Hu adin dafagav de lo hitil. Rather, we're saying no. Even if he didn't put a bury a nefel or bury anybody in there, it would still be also ba'anoya, assuming that the grave was dug for somebody who died. So therefore, specifically, it's designated for somebody who died, and therefore we'd say azmana. We would say it would be also ba'anoya because azmana milsahi. And the point here is to exclude the opinion of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, the Amar who says "Ein l'nefalim tfisas hakever," right? That when we say that dafka, if you bury the nefel there, it's also it would be also ba'anoya. So that would be talking about when the so meaning when we're saying that dafka, if the nefel was buried there, it becomes also. That's talking about when the kever was dug not for somebody who had already died. So since it was dug not for somebody without a mace in mind, so therefore it's not hazmon, it's still mutter ba'anoya. But if you bury a nefel there, then it becomes also ba'anoya, to the exclusion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, who says that a nefel doesn't have tefisas hakever, and therefore if you remove the nefel, according to Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, it would become tahor again, if I'm not mistaken. But we're saying that no, once you bury the nefel there, it becomes asur. So now this is talking about a scenario where the grave was dug at a time when it wasn't specifically dug for a mace, therefore it's mutter ba'anoya until somebody's buried there. However, if it was dug specifically for a mace, it would be already asur ba'anoya because azmana milsa he. Okay, Tashma coming here. Moser amesim limesim. That if money is designated, is donated for mesim, for maybe poor people who are unable to afford burial, or for mesei mitzvah, right? So there was like a fund that was used for mesei mitzvah or aniyim to be buried. So whatever money is left over, so it remains within the fund. It remains for other mesim. Moser ames liyorshav. However, if money was designated to bury a particular person, that collect money for his funeral, well then the leftover money goes to the heirs. So now what's interesting here is that even though the money was designated, so when it comes to the mace, the money was designated for a mace, and yet we're saying that the leftover money goes to the heirs and they can do whatever they want with it. So it sounds like hazmana lav milsahi, because they can do whatever they want with it. Here what are we talking about? Shagavu mechaim. Well, here it's talking about where the money was collected before the person passed away, and therefore it wasn't actually designated for a mace. But 1 second, it was not taught like this. The Tanan that we learned in a Mishnah, Moser Ames Hamesim Lemesim. Okay, money that was designated for either Mesei Mitzvah or for Aniyim to be buried. Lemesim, any leftover money stays within that fund for that designation, for that designated purpose. Moser Ames Leyorshav. But money that is left over for a particular mace, and here we go, right there. 1 second. Okay, fine. Okay, Moser Ames Liyarshav, and whatever is left over for a particular mace goes to the heirs. V'tani Allah, and it was taught on it, Ketzad, how so? Gavu lemesim stam zo Moser Ames lemesim, that if they collected stam for to bury dead people, whether mesei mitzvah, whether aniyim who need burial, so then the leftover money remains within the fund for that designated purpose. But gavu lemeis zeh. But if the money was buried for a particular mace, so we see that it is talking about a particular mace. Zeh mosar mace liyarshav. We're saying in that case, any surplus goes to the heirs. So we see that even though money was collected for a particular mace, nonetheless, we're saying that the surplus can go to the heirs and they can do whatever they want with it. So it sounds like Moser, it sounds like Hazmana Lav Milsahi, and that's why they could do whatever they want with the surplus. Vile Taimich, to which the Gemara says, hold your horses, because the Mishnah continues. Ema Seifa, the Mishnah continues and says, Rav Meir Omer, says Rav Meir, Lo Yigaboin Hachav Eliyahu. Rav Meir says that the designated money cannot be used by the heirs. You have to wait until Eliyahu Novia comes and tells you what to do with the money. Reb Nosson Omer says, Reb Nosson Yai said, Dimos al kivro ziluf mitaso. No, you have to use that money that was collected for this mace for the mace. Either to create some stones around the kever, or to either around or on the kever. 1 second, let me see something. Nidbach shalavonim. Okay, some kind of structure of stones for the kever, or I don't know, some kind of sprinkling of wine before the coffin, I guess. But basically says Reb Nosson that the money has to be used for the nifter. So there it sounds like taka hazmana milsa he. So ella Abai mitar tzatayim, Rav mitar tzatayim. Rather, Abai, who says hazmana milsa, is going to explain the Mishnah according to his view, and Rav, who says hazmana lav milsa, is going to explain the Mishnah according to his view. Abai mitar tzatayim. Abai explains the chuli alma hazmana milsahi, that Tanakama, Reb Meir, Reb Nosson, everybody agrees hazmana milsahi, that the designation is significant. Tanakama, so now the Tanakama, who says that the surplus goes to theirs, they can do whatever they want with it, even though hazmana milsahi, techazi le tofis, telo chazi le tofis, that which is shaykh to the expenses of burying the mace, so that is what is included and designated, and we say hazmana milsa. But any surplus would be that is not considered designated for the mace, and right, only what's relevant for the burial is considered, falls under the umbrella of hazmana milsa, but not any surplus. Rav Meir misapko lei itafis ilo tafis. Rav Meir is uncertain about if the surplus becomes is shaykh to the mace or not. The hilkach le'igaboy not shav Eliyahu. Therefore, he says wait until Eliyahu Navi comes. Rav Nosson pshita le divade tofis. Whereas Rav Nosson says no. Certainly, all of the money is shaykh to the mace, and therefore hilkach yachs sedimus al kivro. Therefore, you need to use the money for the mace, make some kind of a stone structure for the grave, something like that. Rav Matar Tzataymi. Rav, who says hazmana lav milsa, so he'll explain the chuliyam hazmana lav milsa. So hazmana is lav milsa, and therefore Tanakama Savar Ki bazule achule machil ziluse gabe yorshin. That Abai, that Rava says, look, when what does Rashi say? Okay, where am I? Okay. Takam saber mechaim achle ziluse v'nichle sheis bazel achim misos lanos. Right. Where am I? Lanos yorshin kilu. Look, hazmana lav milsa he. According to Rava, setting something aside for the mace doesn't make it asur. However, and therefore, says Rava, look, this person who passed away and they're collecting money for his funeral expenses, when he was alive already, he knew that, it's a little bit disgraceful, that, it's embarrassing that he doesn't have enough money to pay for his own funeral, but he already accepted this sort of embarrassment. And therefore, right, what does he say? Rav Matar Zahem de Chuli Ama Azman Lav Milsi Tanakama Savar Ki Bazu Lei, that when they kind of disgrace him by having to collect money for his funeral, Achuli Mochil Ziluse Gabe Yorshin, he kind of or he says he says he accepted the fact that he's going to be disgraced a bit after his death in order to collect the money, on behalf of his heirs, and whatever is left would go to them. Reb Meir says that it's unclear if he. One second. Okay. Okay. So the question is did he sort of accept, I guess, when he was alive, that there was going to be a bizayon to the benefit of the heirs? So Tanakama says yes, he accepted that, and therefore it's for the heirs. According to Reb Meir, he's not sure. Therefore you have to wait till the Navi comes. Whereas Reb Nosson pshita lei delo mochil, that he was not mochil vis-a-vis the heirs, and therefore anything designated for him would be aser, and therefore for ba'ano hilkach yaisedimos akivro ziluf fnei. So therefore you have to use this money for the mace to make some kind of stone structure, or to sprinkle wine or something before the coffin. Tashma, come here. Are you over v'imo mezarkin bo kalim? Okay, so if you have a son, a child who passed away, and the father and mother were so distraught that they were like chucking things at the coffin, right, at the mace, and making them all asur banoah, as if they're like so struck in grief that they were just like essentially making all of their possessions asur on them. They didn't want anything. They were so distraught, and they were just throwing everything at the kever, making them asur banoah. So, that it's a mitzvah for the others to save these items. So we see that by throwing them at the kever, simply designating them for the mace would make them also ba'ano. So azmona milsi. No, hasam mishum marirayu. There, it's not because meaning. Wait, are we saying one second? Wait, 1 second. Exactly. So that shows that Hazmana lav milsehi, because basically what are we saying? We're saying that they're chucking these things at the kever, right? And yet other people can save them. So even though they're chucking them, we want to say that's Hazmana, that they're designating these things for the mace, and yet other people can kind of save them, and I guess take them away from the kever, and that would save them. So it sounds like Hazmana lav milsehi. So we're saying no, hasam mishum marai, we could say Hazmana milsehi, but over there they're not chucking these things at the kever in order to designate them for the mace. They're chucking them at the kever because they're so distraught. It's part of them being distraught, but not because they actually want to designate them to the for the mace per se. If that's the case, so then how do you explain that which was taught on it? When do we say the shaloi nagu bamita, that so long as they didn't touch the coffin? But if they touch the coffin asurin, then they are forbidden. But if we're saying that it has nothing to do with right, that it's just because of they're so upset, then why are we saying that if you touch the coffin then it becomes also? What difference does it make? Tirgma ula says ula b'mita anikberes imo. Well, the reason why if it touches the mita, it's the coffin, then it's also is because we're talking about the coffin or whatever he's being buried on. Because we're concerned that once it touches that bed, so then people might confuse it with the actual tachriche ames if you say that it becomes mutter banoah, and the actual tachriche ames are also banoah. Toshma, come near kiss shasol aniach bo tefillin, I guess a pouch or so, something that was made in order to put tefillin in it. Okay, also laniach bo maos, you can't put money in it. Okay, so it sounds like hazmona milsi, simply making it for tefillin makes it also for maos. Hiniach bo tefillin, if you put in tefillin but didn't designate it for tefillin, you just put tefillin in it, yaniach bo maos, you could still put in money. So it sounds like hazmona milsa hi. Ema, I'll say aso viniach bo tefillin, also laniach bo maos kedur chizda. No, I mean I can say that it means not just that he made the pouch for tefillin, but that he made it for tefillin and then actually put tefillin in it, and that is why it's also to put in other things like Rav Chizda, that needs a designation, a hazmana plus a maise. Tashma, come and hear. Omer le'umin aseli. So Tashma, Omer le'umin, he says to a craftsman, aseli tik shel sefer, make me a bag for a sefer Torah. Onartik shel tefillin, or I guess something to put tefillin in. Okay. Ad shelo nishtamish boen. So as long as he hasn't used it yet, kodesh for the sefer Torah, for tefillin, mutar l'shtamish ben chos, and you could still use it for other things. So it sounds like Hazmana Lav Milsa He Nishtamish Boyan Kodesh, but then once, after designating it for this purpose, he then put in the Sefer Torah, he then put in the Tefillin, well then, also the Nishtamish Boyan Chol, you can't use it for other things. So there it sounds like Hazmana Lav Milsa He, you have to put something in it afterwards. So Tanoi, it's Takamachlekes Tanoim, the Tani that we're doing in the Brisa, Tzipon Zov, if you have Tefillin and you cover them in gold, Oshe Tala Alein, or Shabbeim Tmeh, or you put the hide of an impure animal on them, Psulis, then either one, if you covered it in gold or you put Behemoth Tmeh on it, so then the Tefillin are Psulis. Or Behemoth Tahora, but if it's the hide of a Behemoth Tahora, Kisheris, then the Tefillin are Ksheris Afal Pi Shelo Ibdon Lishman, even though the hides were not tanned, processed specifically for the Tefillin. So it sounds like Hazmana. It sounds like you don't need Hazmana over there. Reb Shimon ben Gamliel Omer says, Reb Shimon Af or Behema Torah Psulis, even the hide of a Behema Tahora would be Psulis ad she ye'abdu lishman, until they are processed specifically for Tefillin. So we specifically need Hazmana there. Ravina l'Rava, says Ravina to Rava, Mi ika duchta deramu be meis ve'arge beged le meis. Ravina asks Akasha and Rava vis-a-vis the whole premise. Okay? The whole premise is that you have a mace, you have somebody passed away, and you prepare shrouds for the mace. And we're saying simply preparing shrouds for a mace do we say Azmana Milsa or Azmana Lab Milsa? Ravina questions and challenges the whole premise of the question. When do you have a scenario where you wait until the mace dies and all of a sudden you start preparing at that point shrouds for the mace? So so Rava says, yes, Kigon, for example, Shichve Darfanya, for example, in Harpanya there were very poor people, and they didn't have money, and there, basically, when somebody would pass away, at that point, they had to start collecting everything that they need for the burial, and yes, they would only be preparing the shrouds after the person passed away. Darsh Merimar expounds Hilchsa Kavasi de Abayi, that the halacha is like Abayi, that has Mana Milsahi, Rabbanan Amri Hilchsa Kavasi de Rave, whereas the rabbi said the halacha is like Rava, that has Mana Lav Milsahi, Hilchsa Kavasi de Rava, and the halacha is like Rava, because of course the halacha is only like Abayi in 6 instances of Ya'al Kigam. Okay, now we get to a discussion of Haruge Malchus. Haruge Malchus and Oichet Haruge Bezdin. Right? That when somebody is executed by Bezdin, so who inherits his estate? So everyone agrees that somebody who's executed by Bezdin, so then his heirs inherit the estate. Somebody who's executed by Bezdin, so the heirs inherit the estate. However, if somebody is killed by the Malchus, maybe he's Morid b'Malchus, right, and he's Chayiv Misa for that, so then it's a Machlokes. Tanakama says that his estate would be inherited by the king himself, right? If he's killed for blaspheming the king or something, so then the king steps in and takes his estate. However, Rabbi Yehuda says that in that case as well, that even by Haruge Malchus, the estate would go to the heirs as well. Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Haruge Malchus. So people who are executed by the king because he blasphemed the king, for example. So Nechsein Lamelech, Tanakama says that the estate goes to the king. Haruge Bezdin, however, by capital cases, by Haruge Bezdin, when they're killed by Bezdin, Nechsein Liyorshin, the heirs inherit the estate. Wait, where am I? Haruge Malchus Nechsein Lamelech, Haruge Bezdin Nechsein Liyorshin. Okay, fine. So according to Tanakama, right? So if it's Haruge Bezdin, so then his estate is inherited by the heirs. Haruge Malchus, the estate is inherited by the king. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda af Haruge Malchus, that no, also when it comes to Haruge Malchus Nechsein Liyorshin, the estate is inherited by the heirs as well. Amrulei Rabbi Yehuda, they said to Rabbi Yehuda, how could it be that by Haruge Malchus the estate is inherited by the heirs? V'aluk farnema, it says by Achov and Novos, Hine Bekerim Novos Asher Yorad Sham Lirishto, that it says that King Achov went to the vineyard of Novos, who was killed, I believe, on false premises for blaspheming the king, as we're going to see. So he was Haruge Malchus, and Achov was going to take his estate. So it sounds like what the Novi is saying is that Haruge Malchus is inherited by the estate, by the king, which is why Achov was going to take Novos's property. Asher Chom Lirishto, he went there to inherit Novos. Omer Loed, so Yehuda responds and says, no, Haruge Malchus is inherited, the estate is inherited by the heirs. However, Ben Achi Oviv Hoyo V'Roi Liyorsho Hoyo, that Be'etzem Achov was Novos's cousin, and therefore he was next in line to inherit the estate, which is why he was inheriting it, because he is Mishpacha, because he's the next in line to inherit it, in the family. But Novos had lots of children. How could Achov be the next in line? It would go to Novos's children. So Rabbi Yehuda responds, Osov has ban of Harag, that Achov killed not just Novos but also his children, and therefore he was next in line to inherit. Shneimar, as the pasuk says, Im lo ez demei Novos ve'ez demei banov ra'isi, that I saw the blood of not just Novos but also his children. Whereas the rabbis would respond, Au banim aru'uyin lo tseis mimenu. No, that is talking about his children. The blood of the children is the potential children who potentially would come from Novos but who no longer can, but his actual children were still alive, and they would be first to inherit according to the Rabbanon. Well, potentially they would be first to inherit, and therefore the Rabbanon say, why is Achav going? Because Achav, as the king, is zochet to inherit the estate by Haruge Malchus. So now says the Gemara, Bishlam l'manda omar nichsein l'melech. So I understand, according to the opinion who says that by Haruge Malchus, the estate is inherited by the king. That's why it says by Novos, Beirach Novos Elokim V'Melech. It says that what did Novos do? What were his crimes? He blasphemed God, but also the king. Why mention the king? Well, because by saying that Novos blasphemed the king, Achav was able to then go and take his property. But if you say that by Haruge Malchus, his estate is inherited by his heirs, so Lama Liva Melech, why mention blaspheming the king? Who cares? Either way, whether he blasphemed God and killed by the Bezdin, or whether he blasphemed the king and it's Haruge Malchus, either way, he's inherited by his heirs. So why mention Melech? For the timing, but according to that logic, Elokim Lomali, right? But according to that logic, that you're saying that Haruge Malchus is inherited by the king, well then why does it say that he blasphemed God? What does that add? Rather, we include blaspheming God in order to make it seem like he did something really, really, really bad, and to turn opinion against him. So here also you could say the same reason that it says Melech, in order to just make it seem like Novos is a real big shtunk. I understand according to the opinion who says that Haruge Malchus are inherited by the king. That's why the pasuk says by Yoav that Solomon was coming to avenge sort of David's vengeance against Yoav. And it says that what did Yoav do to hide from Solomon? He ran into the Mishkan so that he could be saved not saved, but he ran into the Beis Hamikdash, or into the Mishkan. Well, basically he ran to the altar, and over there, basically what he was doing, he was surrendering himself to the Bezdin, so that he figured that he would be judged by Bezdin, as we're going to learn about tomorrow, for killing Avner and for killing Amasa, and rather he would be executed by the Bezdin rather than being executed by Solomon. Because if he's executed by the king and he's Haruge Melech, so then his heirs would be unable to inherit his estate. But if he would be executed by Bezdin, then his heirs would inherit his estate. So he ran to the Mizbeach, so that basically to indicate that he wants to be, he was surrendering to the court, and he would be executed by the court, but at least then his heirs would be able to inherit him. Right, so Be'onos Yoav El Oyel Hashem, that Yoav ran to the tent of God, Vayechazak b'karnos mizbeach, and he held on to the horns of the mizbeach. And it says, Vayomer lo kipo amus, and Yoav says, look, I'm going to die here by the Sanhedrin. Because there's a distinction between if he's killed by a Haruge Bezdin versus Haruge Melech. Haruge Melech is inherited by the king, and his children would be unable, his heirs would be unable to inherit him. But if you say that he's inherited by his heirs, even by Haruge Melech, so my nafkale mina. What's the difference if he runs to the Mishkan or not? Either way, his heirs will inherit him. Well, it's simply just to save himself, even if temporarily, so that he won't immediately be killed by Solomon. Vayashav Benayo es Amelech Dover Lemor. Well then, okay, so now Benayo was there in the Mishkan, and he became the go-between between Yoav, who was hiding from Solomon, and Solomon. So basically, Benayo was the go-between. So Benayo says to Solomon, he relays a message from Yoav. Vayashav Benayo es Amelech Dover Lemor. Kodiber Yoav v'cho anani. That so says Yoav. Omar le zil emale. Basically, what Yoav asked to relate to Shlomo was tarte lo savid. He says, look, you can't have it both ways. I know that you want to kill me. However, your father, King David, already cursed me. So if you can kill me, but then the curses that your father cursed me will be transferred to you. Or you can leave me alive, and I'll just have to live with the consequences of the curse. You're not going to have it both ways. You're not going to be able to kill me and also leave the curses with me. If you're going to kill me, well then, accept the curses that your father cursed me. And if you are not willing to accept the curses, well then shavke, well then leave me alone, and I'll just have to deal with the curses that your father cursed me. Vayomer lo Amelech, and King Solomon responded, Aseh kashadiber, do as he says, do as Yoav says, ufgabo ukvarto, and one of the options was to kill him. Sure, so kill him, bury him. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, and says Rav Yehuda Marav, Kol klolu shekilo David es Yoav, niskama b'zara shel David. And sure enough, any of the curses that David cursed Yoav came true on David's descendants. They were transferred back to David, to his descendants. Al Yukaris mi beis Yoav Zov, that the curse was that in Yoav's family there should be Zovs, umitzoras, umachzik bapelach, people who need help walking, v'nofel b'cherev, and dying by swords, v'chaser lechem, and having no bread. Zov mirachovim, where do we see Zovs? In David's lineage or descendants from Rechovim. T'chsiv Amelech Rechovim. Hisamitz lalus b'merkava lanus Yushalayim. It says that Rechovim went in Merkava to go to Yerushalayim. And it says by Azov, B'chol HaMerkov asher yikav alav Azov yitma. Mitzorah. Where do we see Mitzoras? Me Uzio. T'chsiv Chezkoso. That when Uzio got strong, Gova Libo, he became haughty, Al-Ashkes, and corrupt. Vayimo mal b'Hashem Eleikov. Vayovo al-Heichal Hashem la'akter al-Mizbach HaKtoris. And he was inappropriate towards God, and he went to the Heichal to burn Ketoris, Vatsaras, Zorcha b'mitzcho, and he got Saras. Machzik b'pelech, having to walk with a walker, Me'asa, Dichsiv, Rak le'ziknoso, Chola esraglu, that when he got old, he had problems with his legs. V'amar Rav Yehuda Marav, she'achazo podarga, that he got the disease called podagra. Amar Mar B'Sutra Breder of Nachman, the Rav Nachman Echidami. What is podagra? Amar Le Kimachad B'Sarchai. It's like needles in live flesh. How does Rav Nachman know this? You could say, well, one option is he once got podagra. Alternatively, he learned it from his Rebbe that this is what it feels like. Alternatively, the secret of God is to those who fear Him, and His covenant to let them know. People on the level of Rav Nachman just know all the secrets, and including what podagra is like. Nofa b'cherev mi-Yoshio, falling on a sword from Yoshio, d'chsiv, v'yorer hayorim lamelech Yoshio, the archers arched and they shot at Yoshio, from Rav Yehuda, amarav shaso kol gufo kichvor, that his whole body became like a sieve, that it was full of arrows. V'chaser lechem Yechonya, and lacking bread from Yechonya, d'chsiv, aruchas tomid nas nalo, that Nebuchadnezzar's son Evil Merodach brought Yechonia food, implying that until then he didn't have anything. Amr V'Yudah Marab Hanu Damri Inche says V'Yudah Marab. This is what the people say: Te luta valte loto. Better to be cursed than to curse, because the one who curses, it ultimately will boomerang back to him. Wow. Okay, that was a big page. The big sugya today was Hazmana Milsa or Hazmana Lab Milsa. Abai says Hazmana Milsa. Rava says Hazmana Lab Milsa. We say in the end that the halacha is like Rava, that Hazmana Lab Milsa. And then we got into Machlokes about Haruge Malchus. The Tanna Kama says that Haruge Malchus is inherited by the king, whereas Rabbi Yehuda says Haruge Malchus is inherited by the person's heirs. Peace out.